Okay, hello everyone. It is 7:30, so we are going to get started. Thank you all for arriving on time. So you should all be able to see my screen share. You should see a title slide that says Indiana County Solar Info Session. My name is Henry McKay. I'm the Pennsylvania Program Director of Solar United Neighbors, and I do see some familiar names here in the attendees list, so it's nice to see you all virtually again, or I guess see your names written down here. I can't actually see you. I'm going to be walking through a few different things here about the solar co-op and solar energy and how the solar co-op can help you go solar. But just first, some housekeeping. If you haven't been on Zoom before, you should see you should have your own mute button or the join audio controls. It's the down or up arrow next to that microphone icon. And you can make sure you have the right devices selected so you can hear me. You can also join via telephone audio instead of computer audio, but then still look at the visuals on your screen. If you have questions, at any time you can enter them into the chat box and make sure it's going to either all panelists or all panelists and attendees. We do have video off, so I don't think anyone should be able to see each other, but you can send your chat in, and I'll stop at the end of each section to answer questions. If you want to ask a question verbally, you can do that too using your microphone. You should see a raise hand button. You press that, and I'll see it, and I will unmute you during the question section at the end of each section. So please, actually, there's not very many people here, so you can probably raise your hand anytime, and I can answer your question. I think this should work. And this webinar is being recorded. We're going to share a link to the recording with everyone who registered for this event after it ended, so people who weren't able to come can view it. Okay, so this is going to have 5 parts. First, we're going to have a quick virtual solar home tour by Cindy, who went solar with the first round of Indiana County Solar Co-op last year. Then we're going to walk through the basics of solar technology, all the components of a solar system, how they generate electricity for you, how they work together to generate energy for your home. We're going to talk about the solar co-op process in part 3. What is a solar co-op? How does it work? How does it make it easier and often more affordable for you to go solar? And then we'll do solar economics. We'll talk about the money. How much does this cost? What are the different ways to pay for it? How does it save you money? How do you think of this like an investment? Because that's what it is. It's an investment. You're making some kind of upfront payment and you're seeing a return over time. And then we're going to have a prize drawing. So for anyone who is on the call, when we do this prize drawing, we'll randomly draw someone from our attendee list, and you're going to win a I believe it's 3 free bags of flour from Leap Farms. Leap Farm is solar power. They're in Indiana County, so it's a nice solar power business to support. And it seems like everybody's baking sourdough these days, so we figured flour can be hard to get, so we figured this would be something useful as well. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to play this video from Cindy Rogers, her virtual solar home tour. If you just give me a moment here, I'm going to switch my screen sharing to Cindy's video here. Hopefully you all will be able to
Hi everyone.
hear this too.
I wanted to show you my solar installation. This is my very
The video's not running, Henry.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see the video.
No, it's not running.
Let me try to fix that. Sorry about that. Share. Try a different way.
Just a picture up, but it's not a video. And it's not
Hi,
the,
everyone.
Did it move there?
no.
Situated solar south.
There you go.
I wanted to show you my solar
That's working now?
It
Was that
just
working?
stopped.
Okay, great. I'll play.
installation. This is my very perfectly situated solar south-facing roof. One thing I want to mention is that it's handy to have a 12-month Sunray electric bill when your installer comes to talk to you, because they look at that. In my case, we used 11,000 kilowatt hours of electricity in 2018, and I hope to get a car sometime, so he added on kilowatt hours for that also. So my system's pretty big. I have 52 panels. I've made about from 385 kilowatt hours a month in January to about 1,900 kilowatt hours in July last year. My average use is about 840 kilowatt hours a month. I made over 8,000 kilowatt hours in 6.5 months last year, June through December. My energy bills pre-solar installation was about $150 a month, and my bills now are about $10 a month for a service fee that you still have to pay. So I'm saving up to $2,000 a year in energy bills, plus I got a 30% tax credit this year on my taxes, and you also earn renewable energy credits that you can take into account. So basically I got about 1/3 of my money back the first year that I paid for the system. I guess it's about a 7 to 8 year turnaround to break even for me. Each panel has its own inverter, which is nice because it tells you exactly what each panel can do and is doing. I'm going to take you down to my solar meter. One other thing I had to do for my system was I had to do an upgrade on a box on a pole someplace out there by the road, because that box was an old system and it had to be upgraded, which most people won't have to do. That was about $1,000. So here's my solar meter, and you can see how much energy I've made since the system went in. You can also see that there's safeguards built into this system, lever that you can disconnect immediately. So I'll take you over to look at the Penelec meter now, and that had to be, the Penelec person had to come and do that before the system could be turned on, and it's a dual meter, and it shows the energy that I'm using and the energy that I'm putting into the grid and what I'm making. So you can see, I don't know if you can see the numbers, but there's a 401 and a 402, and the 401 shows what I used and the 402 shows what I earned and put back into the grid. And the numbers are a little bit different than my solar meter because it's deducting what I've used overnight when I'm not making energy. So that's my system. My experience was great. The installer patiently answered all my questions, and he even came back to help me read my Penelec bill when it transitioned over because they were really confusing. There's a really cool app that you get, and it shows your production no matter where you are. You can look at it. And I guess I just want to say that I really wanted to do solar because I felt it was the right thing to do for the environment, and we really like the whole idea of renewable solar energy.
Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my slides here. There we go. Thank you, Cindy, for that. I'm I'm going to continue here. So we're going to talk through the solar technology section, then and then I'll pause for questions after that. So if you have questions for me about this first section or about Cindy and the stuff she was talking about and her experience going solar, that would be the time to ask them. Remember, you can ask them with text in the chat, or you can ask them by raising your hand, and I'll unmute you. Okay, so solar technology. So just to clarify, what we're talking about here is solar photovoltaic technology, solar PV. So this is solar panels that generate electrical current from sunlight. Not solar thermal or solar heating, where you're actually heating up a fluid that runs through these panels and using that to like heat hot water in your house. So these solar panels, the primary technology is still silicon. So these little blue squares you see here are silicon wafers, and when the sunlight hits those, it excites the electrons in that silicon and they start to flow. They're gathered up in those wires that run through each of the wafers, and that flow of electrons is electrical current. And then when you link multiple panels or modules together, you call that a solar array. And then these are also covered with different protective sheets, protective glass, so they are fairly durable pieces of equipment. The solar panels produce direct current electricity, DC, but what you use in your home, what comes out of your electrical outlets, is alternating current, AC. So you need a device called an inverter to switch that DC into AC. Now, the traditional kind of option is the string inverter, which is this option on the left here. So this is one box, and you could see it's one box, and it takes all that current from the roof and it switches from DC into AC and then sends it into your electrical service panel. A solution that is becoming more and more popular now is the microinverter, where you'll have one very small inverter attached to the back of each solar panel. It does that same DC to AC conversion, but one per solar panel. So with a string inverter, it's not just doing DC to AC conversion with any inverter, it's also doing some power optimization. So there's always an optimum voltage and current level that'll maximize the wattage, the power you get out of your system at any given time. And those optimum parameters will fluctuate throughout the day as the sunlight intensity changes, as the sun passes behind a cloud, as shadow is cast on the solar panels. And a string inverter can handle a certain amount of variation in these optimum parameters. So maybe some of the panels on this side of the roof get shaded, and it can handle that variation, and you won't really experience a big efficiency loss. But if you have too much variation in shading and sunlight amount on your solar panels, the string inverter will eventually have to kind of revert to the lowest common denominator, and some more productive panels might be kind of curtailed a little bit to match the optimum power parameters of other panels in the system. So you get some efficiency loss with a partially shaded system is what can happen with the string inverter. Microinverters correct for that problem by doing that power calibration, that optimization at each individual panel level. So each individual panel is always running at its most efficient voltage and current levels. Microinverters can also tell you what each panel is doing when they report production. You'll always get an app with your solar installation that essentially talks to your inverter or inverters, and it tells you real-time production information. Microinverters can tell that for each individual panel as opposed to your whole system or sections of your whole system. Microinverters tend to have longer warranties as well, which tells us that they're likely longer lasting products, like 25-year warranties as opposed to 10, 12, 15 for string inverters. Although there are string inverters out there that you can get 25 or 20-year warranties on. So there are supposed to be longer lasting string inverters as well. And then there's this hybrid solution in the middle here, the string inverter and DC optimizer. So you have a string inverter just like the one on the left that does that inversion. But then you also have these DC optimizers, these little boxes clipped to the back of each solar panel like a microinverter. Those do that power optimization, letting you calibrate or automatically calibrating the exact voltage and current for each individual panel to maximize output, but still letting all that DC to AC inversion happening at the inverter itself. Oh, my annotations are still there. Sorry about that. Okay. And then there's the racking, so it's how you attach it to your roof if you're doing a roof mounted system. So you can see here there are rails running along this roof, and then the rails are actually attached, punctured through the roof down into the rafters of the house. So it is a very secure connection, and then that penetration point is protected, should be protected 2 ways. This is the industry standard. So there'd be some kind of goop, some kind of silicone sealant in there to protect the hole, and then there's flashing, that black sheet of metal you can see in the photo that directs water away from the penetration point. And then the solar panels are attached directly to those rails. Now there are lots of different types of racking out there for lots of different types of roofs. So installers will have the most experience with and be most comfortable with asphalt or composite shingle roofs, and that's what you can see on the left here. But standing seam metal roofs are also really great for solar. One advantage is you can avoid any penetration. You can see the rack there is actually clamped directly on to the standing seam of the roof. There's no drilling holes in your roof, which is always nice when you don't have to drill holes in your roof. Similarly, if you have a flat roof, perhaps a flat roof covered in rubber membrane, you want to avoid any penetration, so you do a ballasted system. So the system is actually, the panels are actually weighted down on the roof so they don't blow away in a storm. With any of these options, it's important to consider the age of your roof. You don't want to put solar on a roof that is too old. Basically, if you need to do roof work while you have solar panels on the roof, you're going to have to pay somebody to take those panels off and put it back on, and that can be expensive. So we recommend having at least 10 years of life left in your roof, ideally doing this on a new roof. That's one of the reasons why these standing seam metal roofs can be great for solar, because they last so long. They last like 50 years. And of course, you don't have to put it on the roof. You can put your solar panels on the ground. You can do a ground mounted system if you have the space for it. And there's some advantages and disadvantages here. So one advantage is you don't have to worry about whatever your roof is doing. If your roof is too shady, if it's too old, if it's pointed in the wrong direction, you don't have to worry about that. You put them on the ground and you get them oriented just perfectly. You get them facing due south. You get them pitched at latitude so they maximize electricity production throughout the year. They can be easier to clean, brush snow off of. Western Pennsylvania isn't a place where you really need to clean solar panels that much, because we're so rainy. You don't get a lot of dust buildup like you would out west. You may want to wipe snow off if it's easy to do. If you have snow on your roof solar panels, it's probably not worth climbing up there to brush the snow off, and that's because it takes a pretty thick layer of snow to actually stop production at all. You might just be lessening production, and we heard from one homeowner in northwestern Pennsylvania who figured out it took about 2 inches of snow in his panels to stop them from generating electricity. And then he was only losing about $1 a day in electricity he didn't generate. So that wasn't worth it for him to climb up on his roof in the winter, which is dangerous, and cleaning that snow off. Ground-mounted solar panels also tend to operate a little more efficiently. When solar panels get hot, they get less efficient. There's an inverse relationship between temperature and resistance, and then ultimately voltage. When your solar panels are on a roof, they're mounted very close to the roof surface, so not a lot of air can circulate around them. But when your solar panels are mounted on the ground, you can see there's a lot more space there for air to circulate, and they can get they stay a little cooler. They don't heat up as much in the sun, which means more efficient operation, more energy coming out of them. There's 2 important units to understand when we're talking about solar. One is the kilowatt or watt. A kilowatt is 1,000 watts, and one is the kilowatt hour. A kilowatt hour is 1,000 watt hours. A watt is a measure of power, and a watt hour is a measure of energy. We often use those terms, interchangeably, colloquially, but they are different things. Power is an instantaneous thing, and energy is essentially power sustained over time. And the way to think about this with solar is the most useful way to measure the size of your solar system is not the number of panels, but the number of kilowatts. So if you remember what Cindy's installation looked like, where basically cover that whole side of a roof, that was a little over 16 kilowatts of solar. And the reason that talking about wattage is useful is that's the power production capacity. That's kind of how much firepower you have. Talking about number of panels is a little bit useful, but one model of solar panel might be 280 watts, another might be 300, another might be 360. They're starting even to have ones that are over 400 watts now. So you could have a big range of solar capacity if you just say the number of panels. Also, and so a watt hour is how you would measure energy produced by your solar system during a given period. So you might measure how much you produced in March in kilowatt hours. Kilowatt hours is also a unit you'll probably recognize from your electric bill because you're being charged from your utility based on the number of kilowatt hours of energy you consume from them. Most homeowners are likely going to install a system somewhere between 4 kilowatts, which is a very small system, and 12 kilowatts, although those numbers turn out to be actually a little low for Indiana County. The first time we did this Indiana County Solar Co-op, there were plenty of systems well over 12 kilowatts, some even over 20 kilowatts. In Pennsylvania, a residential system can get as big as 50 kilowatts, which is huge. I've never heard of anyone needing anything close to that amount of solar, but they can get pretty large. So not every site is good for solar. Not every house or roof is good for solar, and that's because it doesn't meet all 3 of these criteria. One, obviously you want to have ideally no shading, but really as little shading as possible, because as we talked about, a solar system can handle some degree of shading. But the more shading you have, the less energy you'll generate, but you're still paying from these solar panels, so it'll extend your return on investment in a bad way. You ideally want to have the place where you're putting the panels facing due south, because we're in the northern hemisphere. The sun is generally to the south throughout the year. But really anywhere between due west, south, and due east will work. So if you have a house that has an east-facing roof and a west-facing roof, you could actually put solar on both roof faces, and you'd have your morning solar and afternoon solar. And you want to have enough space to do it. So you want at least 250 square feet of contiguous, unbroken space. As a roof gets busier with different roof faces and dormers and vents and satellite dishes, the solar installation gets more complicated. It could get more expensive. It could be just not viable, or it could create so much variation in panel orientation that you'll need microinverters rather than a string inverter. So the easiest roofs are simple ones. Although in Western Pennsylvania, we have a lot of complex roofs, and installers generally have experience working with those kind of roofs. So if you're unsure if your house is good for this, one of the things we do when you join the Solar Co-op is we do a very preliminary satellite-based roof analysis, just to let you know if you're likely appropriate for solar or if you're barking up the wrong tree. So all of these components together, how do they work? So first I want to point out, you can see the power lines connected to the house here. So we are talking about a grid-tied solar system. This house is still a customer of their electric company. They are not off-grid. This is the most common way to go solar, and it's the most economical way to go solar. If you want to go solar off-grid, you need a whole lot of batteries to store your energy, so you have energy to use during night and the winter when you're not generating enough. That can be very expensive. But when you're tied to the grid, you can essentially use the electric grid like a battery. And I'll talk about how that works. So let's imagine it's a really sunny day. The sun is shining down on your solar panels. They're generating DC current electricity, direct current electricity. That's item number 1 here on the diagram. That current all travels down to object number 2, the solar inverter. In this case, it's a string inverter where it's switched from DC into AC. And then that goes right into 3, the electrical panel, and goes into the general mix of electricity in your home, and you use it. Now, if in this case, it's a really sunny day and maybe you're out of the house, so you're not using that much electricity, but you're still generating it, so you'll have some extra. So whatever extra you don't need is going to go out through number 4 there, the utility meter. That meter is going to measure that backflow of electricity back out onto the grid, and then it's going to go down the power lines, and it's going to be used, likely by your neighbor or somebody nearby. And the electric company is going to sell that energy they got from you. And for this to be fair, they're going to pay you for that energy that you exported. So, they don't actually pay you cash. The way that they'll do it is they credit you on your electric bill. So if you produce 10 extra kilowatt hours in June, then in the rest of the year, you'll have 10 free kilowatt hours of energy you can use. And that becomes helpful during the times when, like the winter, when it's not that sunny, but you still are using a lot of energy. You'll use whatever you generate, but you'll likely still need some more. And then you can buy extra from the electric company. But if you've built up all those bill credits in the summer during the sunny time of year, then you can spend down those bill credits instead of spending extra money. So essentially what this does is let you bank a bunch of credits in the summer and then spend them down the rest of the year. So if you have enough space for it, you can cover a year's worth of electricity with solar panels, even though it's not evenly sunny all year. So that's how you're using the grid like a battery. You're sending your extra energy into the grid, you're charging it during the summer, and then you're discharging it during the winter. This process where your electric meter can flow both ways, you can send energy out to the grid and draw it into the grid, is called net metering. It's called net metering because your monthly electric bill then is really showing you you're being billed on the amount of electricity you used minus whatever you produced. And often there will be a surplus when you produced. Utilities are required by law in Pennsylvania to let you net meter. Or I should say, what are called investor-owned utilities are required by law to let you net meter. So that's companies like Penelec. Rural electric co-ops like REA are not required by law. They're not regulated by the state in the way that the investor-owned utilities are. REA does offer net metering, and basically the same net metering deal that you would get with Penelec. We actually have really fantastic net metering in Pennsylvania. It's one of the best net metering policies in the country because it is full retail rate. So your excess monthly generation, 10 extra kilowatt hours gives you 10 kilowatt hour credits. It's 1-to-1 rate at the retail rate. Although at the end of the year, it's the avoided cost rate. So if you reach the end of Penelec's billing year and you still have extra credit, you've generated more than you used, they're going to credit you for that excess energy at the avoided cost rate, the price to compare, the wholesale rate, that lower rate. Our net metering is also great because there's no caps on how many people can do it across the state. There's no caps on how much energy can be generated. I think it's different for REA, but for Penelec, there's no cap on how much energy you can generate. So sometimes they'll, in other places, they'll say you can only generate 110% of your annual usage, but that's not the case for a Penelec customer in Pennsylvania. And also we have these pretty large limits on system size, 50 kilowatts for residential, and I believe it's 200 for commercial. So what happens when the power goes out? So a lot of people think, well, if I have solar and it's a sunny day and there's a power outage in my area, I should still have electricity. And that is unfortunately not the case. And there are two exceptions to this, which we'll go over in a second. But the reason for this is when the grid goes down, your inverter can tell. It's always kind of listening to the electricity coming from the power grid. It can tell, and in a fraction of a second, it'll shut off. And this is a safety mechanism. It's because that utility is going to think, oh, these lines are dead, there's a power outage, we're going to send our linemen up to fix whatever broke. And they're not going to be expecting your solar system to be pushing current out onto those wires, and they could get electrocuted. So it's a safety mechanism required by regulation. Solar systems have to be able to do this. So the exceptions, if you want power during an outage, the small exception is you can get there's some types of inverter, the SMA Sunny Boy is an example that has a feature called a secure power supply. This is basically an electrical outlet right in the inverter. You can plug an extension cable into it, and as long as the sun is shining, you can draw electricity from that inverter. So your inverter will no longer be sending your solar energy into your electrical service panel, into your home, but it will send it to that outlet. So you can run some loads while sun is shining. And then the bigger exception to this, if you want power during an outage, you need battery storage. So batteries, the technology is changing rapidly. They're becoming more affordable all the time, but it still is expensive. So we generally don't recommend that people get batteries unless they really need it. So if they have frequent utility outages, it might be worth it to spend money on batteries. If there's critical electrical loads at home you just can't lose power to, like well pumps, medical equipment, ventilators, it might be worth spending money on those batteries, or if you just want to be prepared in the event of a disaster. Batteries also require space to install them, and they don't like getting too hot or too cold. You can't stack stuff on top of them. So it makes a much more complex installation. So it really is something you only want to do if you really want that backup power. And that is all batteries do, is that backup power in the event of outages. You're not drawing from the batteries like at night when your solar panels aren't generating. It's actually more cost effective to just do net metering and draw that power from the grid. Because remember, because we have one-to-one net metering, that grid battery is a 100% efficient battery, whereas a real battery is far less than 100% efficient. So you're always losing a little bit of energy when you put it in a battery and take it out again. And you're also putting a little wear and tear on that battery, which shortens its lifetime. Okay, I'll do some frequently asked questions, and then you all can jump in with more questions if you have them, either for me or for Cindy. So first, warranties. There are a number of different warranties on a solar installation. The panels will have a manufacturer's warranty. The inverter will have a manufacturer's warranty. The installer will often offer some kind of labor warranty, or maybe a roof penetration warranty covering the work they're doing on your home. And the panels also come with, importantly, something called a production warranty. So this is rather than protecting you against manufacturing defects, like the panel just stops working, this is a guarantee of how slowly this panel will degrade in efficiency over time. So all solar panels, as they get older, they get a little less efficient each year. The production warranty will tell you, all right, each year your degradation is going to be no more than a certain percentage, or by year 20 you're going to be at least like 80% of your original factory efficiency. And that's one important measure of quality for solar panels, is how slowly they degrade over time. Going solar may affect your homeowner's insurance. We've heard cases of it causing your premiums to go both up and down. So we highly recommend talking to your insurance company if you're considering going solar, and getting them to estimate what impact this will have on your premiums. Systems last, solar installation will last 25 plus years. If you have a string inverter, that will likely need to be replaced once during the life of your solar system. Microinverters should last the whole time. So this is a long-term investment in your home. There is very little maintenance you should expect to do. These are low maintenance systems. As I said, inverter replacement might be one thing. It's probably a good idea to have a professional just do a quick checkup of your solar system every 5 or so years, just to make sure everything is working correctly and allowing you to head off any problems that might get worse if left unchecked. If anyone here lives in a community with a homeowners association, they can actually just block you from going solar in Pennsylvania, unfortunately. So you need to get their permission to allow you to go solar. Similarly, in a historic district or a historic home, there may be restrictions as to what you can do on the outside of the building, so they might stop you or limit how much solar you can install. Okay, that is the end of that section. If anyone has a question, you can type it right into the chat here, or you can press the raise hand button and I will unmute you when I see your raised hand. Any questions for me or for Cindy? Oh, I see a raised hand. Okay, Paul, you are unmuted, or you can unmute yourself now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, how much does it add to the system for a freestanding system? Is it significantly more expensive?
Good question. So in case you didn't hear, the question was how much more expensive is a ground mounted system? They typically are more expensive. It varies a lot. Sometimes I've seen installers just charge a flat like $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 for a ground mount. Sometimes they'll charge, it's another few cents per watt. Sometimes, depending on how close it is to the building where you're running the power, that could also add additional costs and also cost us a little bit of voltage loss. So you're losing a little bit of power. It really varies a lot. We have had one co-op where the installer actually had a slightly cheaper price for ground mount, but that is unusual. So you should expect ground mount to be a little bit more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me or for Cindy? Okay, I'll continue. So part 3, how solar co-ops work. So in a nutshell, a solar co-op is a group of people in a geographic area, in this case, Indiana County, going solar together all through one solar installer, but still getting their own individual private solar installation paid for by themselves. And then getting support from Solar United Neighbors as your technical solar advisor. The benefits of this are often you're able to save money, get a cheaper installation than you would going on your own. And that's because you're essentially pooling everybody's collective buying power in the whole solar co-op, and that can help the installer bid more competitively than they would quote an individual person. Sorry, Paul, did you have another question? Did your hand go up a second time?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
When we signed up to be a member, I guess maybe you're going to get into that, but what is the next step? Is somebody going to come out and look at the site and assess the site, whether it's suitable or not, or is that what you're getting into now, what the process is?
That's my next slide. So yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so you're talking about joining as a member of the solar co-op. There is something which is a little confusingly called being a member of Solar United Neighbors, where you're basically on our mailing list. But in order to be part of the co-op, you need to fill out a little bit more extensive application where you're giving us your address and things like that. So, excuse me. Yes, I'll get to that in just a second. So other benefits of the co-op. So one, better price. We're here to help you go beyond the sales pitch. So we can provide unbiased, detailed, reliable information about solar to help you make a really informed, confident decision about this, because this is, solar has gotten a lot cheaper over the years, but still is a big investment. And so you want to do it in a really smart way. We can also make this more fun. We're connecting you with fellow solar enthusiasts. It's not just you doing this, it's you and a whole bunch of other people in your community, amplifying your impact together. And then once the solar co-op ends, we are also an education and advocacy organization. So we make you part of this broader solar movement where you can stay in touch with other solar advocates, learn about changes in policy, technology, learn about related technologies like electric cars, and also, be notified if something like utilities are perhaps trying to attack net metering and weaken our net metering rules, which actually is happening right now. And I will talk about that in a few slides. And really only solar homeowners like you all hope to be can defend against that kind of thing. Okay, so the solar co-op process. So I'll walk through exactly how this works. It is roughly an 8 to 10 month process. It varies a lot co-op to co-op, but it is time limited. So at some point the co-op ceases to exist. So the first step is to learn about the solar co-op. That's what you're all doing right now. We've done a few other of these webinars. And also one in-person event before everything shut down. So that's step 1, learn about solar, learn about the co-op. Step 2 is if you're interested in joining the co-op, you sign up. I'll have the URL or the website you can go to where you can actually fill out the application to do this at the end of the slideshow. You can also Google Indiana County Solar Co-op. And joining the co-op is free. It doesn't obligate you to go solar. We do ask that you are reasonably sure that you actually do want to go solar at this time if you join the co-op, just so we don't have a lot of people joining and only a few people signing a contract. But signing up gives you access to us as your technical solar consultants. We're here to answer your questions. And it gives access to ultimately the group pricing deal from whoever the installer ends up being. So right now, if you join the solar co-op, you'll start to get emails from us about the co-op, but nothing is going to happen immediately because we have not yet selected an installer for this solar co-op. So once we hit critical mass, and that's roughly 20 members, which we are at right now, we have 20 members, we put out the request for proposals to solar installers. And we say, hey, any solar installer who works in this area, send us your best bid for a group rate for servicing all of these customers. We're going to do this on May 15th, so a week from tomorrow, a week from Friday. The more people who join the co-op before we release that RFP, the more, the juicier a prize the solar co-op comes to those bidding installers, and the more aggressively they bid. So, it is important for people to join before the deadline so we can earn better bids through the RFP process. So once we put that RFP out, we start to gather these bids from solar installers, where they're telling us what price they would charge, what equipment they would use. Do they do battery storage? Will they put in an EV charger? Tell us about your company. How many people work there? Where are you based? How long have you been in business? How many installs have you done? All kinds of information about these companies. But we don't vet them, and that is really crucial because we are installer neutral. We don't want to be, even have the appearance of it looking like we're, we have our buddies in this one company and we're kind of selling your business to them. So what we do is we do a little bit of homework. We call their references, their customer references. We make sure they're properly insured and licensed. But mostly we're compiling this information. And then we ask members of the solar co-op to volunteer for the selection committee. So actually taking some time out of your day and meeting, now it will be virtual. It used to be in person, but it'll be virtual now, to review all of these bids. I'm there in the meeting to help people understand how to compare each bid in a fair way, how to understand what is in them. But it is the selection committee members who make a decision. They vote on which one company is going to win this co-op's business. And that makes sure that that really is the co-op's preferences are reflected in the selection of the installer. Because every one of those selection committee members is going to have information that all the co-op members put in their application. When you join, we ask you, what are you looking for in a good installer? Is it, are you really concerned about price? Is it, quality of warranties? Do you want a local company? Do you want a company that has a lot of experience? All that information gets kind of aggregated and shared with the selection committee so they can pick on behalf of the preferences of the whole solar co-op. So once they pick that installer signs an agreement with us saying we promise to offer this deal in our bid to everybody who joins the solar co-op in the future and everyone who's already in it. And then roughly 2 months from that point, we set a sign-up deadline. No more people can join after those 2 months are up. We do a last big push to get people to join, and we try to get newspaper articles. We try to get media attention about this. We have partners we work with who help us promote this, like the Indiana County Sustainable Economic Development Task Force. But really, the most effective way to grow solar co-op is for people who are already in it to tell your friends and neighbors. Say, this is something we're trying, you should consider it as well. That's the most effective way to grow the solar co-op. And especially before the RFP stage, if you're hoping to grow it, it's really in your interest because you could help earn a better deal by making that co-op larger. So once that installer is selected, they will start reaching out to all of the co-op members. And we'll also give you their contact information if you want to get a head start. But that installer will start to schedule site visits, and they'll come out to your house. They can do these in a social distancing friendly way now. Most of it happens on the outside of your house. They may need to get inside to see an electrical service panel. But they will use that information to design a solar system that is appropriate for your home, but also appropriate for your budget, your preferences. How much energy do you want to offset? Do you want to generate a little extra energy because you want to get an electric car? But it's a very customized proposal. So it's at the group pricing rate, whatever it is, $2.75 per watt. But it is however much or little solar that you want. So you'll get the proposal, and then we can talk you through the proposal if you need help understanding it. But if you decide this is a good deal, I want to go solar, then you can sign a contract with that company, and you get that co-op deal. And only at that point are you actually on the hook to go solar. Up until this point, you can say, no, I don't want to do it. Now's the right time. I changed my mind, or I want to work with some totally different company, not through the co-op. You can do that, and there's no penalty or anything. But once you sign the contract, there are contract terms, limiting how you can back out and things like that. After you sign the contract, your installation will be scheduled, and the installation itself is fairly quick, a day or so. But there is a longer period of waiting for your installer to obtain the proper permits from local government and from the electric company. So it is usually a matter of weeks for your installation to be completed. Installs are happening now again in Pennsylvania. Starting May 1st, construction opened up. So we have seen solar installations happen, restart. There are new rules. They have to wear masks, for example. They're washing their hands all the time. No more than 4 people can be inside a building at once. So they're able to do it in a safer way, but they can happen now. So we don't have to wait around for the lockdown to end to go solar. And then once everyone who wants to go solar in the co-op gets their installation completed, we have a party and we celebrate all doing something really cool together, going solar. We talk about what's next for the solar movement. And I really hope by the time we do this, we can all do it in person. So just to emphasize, it is the co-op participants that pick the installer. It's not Solar United Neighbors. We are installer neutral. We want to help the co-op participants make a confident, informed decision here. Okay, are there any questions about this solar co-op section? You can raise your hand or you can type it in the chat here. Okay, I am not seeing any questions, but you feel free to jump in if you're just still finding the button. So solar economics, how much does this cost? How much does it save you? A few considerations off the top. Solar is priced by the watt. If you're in the selection committee and you're looking at these bids being compared, you'll see them expressed as dollars per watt, $2.70 per watt. Because you're paying for your power production capacity. You're not paying for a number of silicon rectangles. This is a long-term investment, so if you are moving soon, it might not be the right time to go solar. Typical payback period, while these last 25 or so years, it'll take you, anywhere between 7 and 12 years to actually save as much as you spent going solar. And the way you think about your savings is it's electricity you no longer have to buy. So your average residential utility rate, the higher that is, and Penelec has a pretty high residential retail price, the more quickly you'll earn back your solar investment because you're not having to buy more expensive electricity. And also you take into account the fact that energy prices rise over time. In Pennsylvania, it's to the tune of about 1 to 2% per year is how the Federal Energy Information Administration expects Pennsylvania electric prices to rise. So going solar, is a hedge against future electric price increases. And solar, as you probably know, is getting increasingly affordable. It is no longer this boutique specialty product that only a few people can afford. It is becoming very mainstream, a very middle-class investment. So you can see in this graph here, the blue line is the average price of a residential installation across the country. The red line with the yellow dots underneath it is the average price of a solar co-op installation. You can see there is a little bit of a discount there. So solar co-ops are able to earn more competitive pricing on average than the market as a whole. So this is some example pricing because we didn't pick the installer yet. We don't know what the actual price is going to be, and that information is also only for co-op members. We don't broadcast it widely, so another installer can't come in and charge 1 cent less and poach the co-op's business. So this is just based on our example, our average co-op pricing. The average of all of our Western Pennsylvania co-ops is $2.55 per watt, which is a really competitive price. Yeah, for what you would see in Western Pennsylvania. So at that rate, I'll talk about this 8 kilowatt example, the column on the right. The sticker price for that installation will be about $20,000. After the 26% federal tax credit, that takes you down to about $15,000. So this is a tax credit, it's not a tax deduction. So your next year's tax bill is reduced by 26% of the entire cost of your solar installation. Now it's not refundable, so if you don't have enough tax appetite in a single year to enjoy that whole 26%, you can roll it over for multiple years. In this tax credit, as I will talk about it does shrink year to year, so it's only 26% for systems completed this year. So I'm going to skip this solar renewable energy credit line just for now, but we estimate, making a lot of assumptions, a typical home might save about $1,000 with an 8 kilowatt system in the first year. After 10 years, more like $10,000. And then after 25 years, almost $30,000. So that means you have a net profit of $16,000 from going solar. So those are substantial savings, and it's a really reliable investment. It's not like the stock market where you don't, you can lose money, you don't really know what's going to happen. Electricity is going to stay as expensive or get more expensive in the future, and that's what you're betting on when you go solar. And then, so that's all the savings that come from just generating energy and not having to buy energy from the utility. But you also, as Cindy mentioned, every time you generate 1,000 kilowatt hours of solar energy, you earn 1 solar renewable energy credit, or SREC, S-R-E-C. So an SREC is, the way they work is the electric utilities buy these SRECs. They have compliance requirements they have to meet from the state government, where the Pennsylvania says all these electric utilities need to get 0.5% of their energy from solar by 2021. And because our utilities are deregulated, they split generation and distribution. They can't build their own solar farm, so they are buying SRECs from people like you who already have solar. That's how they meet this compliance requirement. So SRECs in Pennsylvania are, I think they're around $30, maybe a little bit more right now. So it's not a lot. It's not the best SREC market by far in the country. The best is DC, where they're more like $400 an SREC. And that means, you do earn some revenues in this example if you sell your first 5 years of SRECs at a 5-year fixed rate of $30. That's about $1,500 to help defray the cost of your installation. And the value of SRECs is really determined by policy. So if Pennsylvania sets a more aggressive renewable energy goal and says, hey, maybe we should get 10% of energy from solar or more than that, that means there's more demand from utilities to buy these SRECs. And that means the price goes up. That means solar homeowners get more revenue. Solar becomes an even more attractive investment, and more people go solar. Okay. So the tax credit, it was 30% last year. It's 26% this year. Next year it'll be 22, and then it'll go down to 0. For commercial installations, it's the same schedule, except it goes down to, instead of 0, it goes down to 10% and stays there indefinitely. We are really hoping, and we are asking Congress about this, to extend the tax credit as part of the stimulus, as a way to help people control their energy costs, ensure that there's this boost of solar installations that helps local installation companies, local jobs. But it still is kind of a long shot ask. And this is a graph that'll show you the different ways of paying for solar. A cash purchase, a finance system, or a third-party ownership. So the horizontal axis is time, is years. The vertical axis is above the origin, it's savings, and below is net cost. So the dark blue line here is a cash purchase. You can see in year zero, there's a big outlay of cash to pay for the solar installation. And then they get the tax credit back. This is 30, but it's 26% now. So year one, you have already saved a little bit of money with the tax credit. And then over time, you are digging yourself out of that hole. You're saving money on your electric bill. You're recouping your initial investment. At some point, you break even, and then you have net savings after that. And after by year 25, you have pretty substantial savings. You can also finance your system. You can borrow. You take out a loan to pay for it, and that means you avoid that big upfront cost. And in this example, it's a 4% interest loan, 15-year term, the loan payments are defrayed by your energy savings. Year 15, the loan is paid off, and then you have free energy after that. And you still have pretty substantial savings by year 25, although it's less than had you done a cash purchase because you're paying interest. Really, any type of loan you can use for this. Solar installers often have a financing partner where they can connect you with a specific solar tailored loan product. You can also use a home equity line of credit. That's a good interest rate now, and all interest rates are pretty good right now, actually. So it can be a really great time to go solar with a financed system. And then there's the third option. I won't go into too much detail on, but it's the green bars here, and it's the third-party owned system where the installer puts it on your house for free, and you don't pay any upfront cost. They maintain ownership of the system, and you pay them either a monthly lease payment for that solar or a monthly kilowatt-hour payment for the energy it produced. And ideally, that new solar bill you're paying plus your now much smaller electric bill combined is less than your old electric bill, so you're saving right from the first month. That's if it's a good deal. It isn't always necessarily a good deal. And you're essentially signing a long-term contract, so there's a lot of fine print you want to be careful about, like what happens if you want to sell your home mid-contract. So it can be trickier, but it can be a very accessible way for people to go solar. Your savings at the end of the life of the system are likely going to be much lower than a financed or cash system. So something to keep in mind. We have not yet had any Pennsylvania installers bid on a Pennsylvania co-op who even offer third-party ownership. So it likely will not be an option for members of this co-op, but it often is an option for solar companies who advertise to you on Facebook. So it is important to understand what it means. This is not related to the finance section, but just a quick note. So as I mentioned, we don't just do solar co-ops, Solar United Neighbors. We're also fighting for better solar policies. And what we're doing is we're helping you fight for better solar policies. We are working hard to enable community solar in Pennsylvania right now to pass law, HB 531 or SB 705, that would let a farmer set up a big solar array out in his field, and then a lot of electricity users to subscribe to a share of it and kind of virtually go solar. So they get the financial benefits of going solar. They're solar powered, but they don't physically have to put it on their home. We're working to protect net metering right now. All of you, by registering this, you're on our mailing list now, and we're going to be sending out a message about this. If we haven't already today, we're going to be doing it the next few days. There is a shadowy utility front group called the New England Ratepayers Association, who has filed a petition with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to essentially kill net metering, to say this shouldn't be something states can decide for themselves. It should be the federal government who decides it, and it should be at the wholesale rate, not the full retail rate. So it would kill net metering in Pennsylvania. It would kill it anywhere else who has it. So it's dramatically unfair to not pay solar owners a fair price for the energy they generate and contribute back to the grid. So we're working hard to support that. And we're going to be asking for your help in talking to state governors, talking to Governor Wolf, to get him to put pressure on FERC. We think that's the most effective way to pressure this kind of opaque regulatory body. Okay, before we do the prize drawing, are there any questions about the stuff I just said? Financing, money. You can raise your hand or type in the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Feel free to jump in though later if you have them. We're going to go to the prize drawing. So today our prize is from Leaps Farm in Indiana County. Leaps Farm is solar powered. They've been solar powered for a while now. They were a local solar power business, and the prize is 3 bags of their flour that they mill. I figure everyone's baking sourdough these days, and it can be kind of hard to get flour at the grocery store still. So I figured a lot of people would appreciate something like this, especially from a local solar power business. So what I'm going to do is I am randomly drawing from the list of participants here who have still stuck around to the end of this call. And the winner is Matthew Benzie. So congratulations, Matthew. We have your email address, and I will send you an email connecting you with Leap Farm, and I believe it will actually deliver it to your home. So we'll get that set up via email tomorrow. So congratulations, Matthew, and I'm going to make sure to make a note that you were the winner here. Okay. So if there are any other questions, the way you join the solar co-op is you visit solarunitedneighbors.org/Indiana County. That has a sign-up form there. You can also always reach out to us with questions at pateam@solarunitedneighbors.org. Also join our Facebook group, Solar United Neighbors of Pennsylvania. It's a great place to ask solar questions, share solar news, stay up to date with what's happening in solar in Pennsylvania and nationally, and connect with other solar enthusiasts. And please do tell your friends, share this link with other people in Indiana County. We want this to be as big as possible. Last year, the Indiana County Solar Co-op was the biggest in the state. We want this new round to be just as big, if not bigger. So we need your help to do that. That is it. Thank you all so much for taking the time to do this and being on yet another Zoom call, I'm sure, in your life. So it was nice to talk to you all, and I hope to see you all as co-op members in the future. I am going to